Hi, I'm Madi Martinez, and we're here to talk about week 3, chapter 3 of The Artist's Way. It's called Recovering a Sense of Power. Julia says, you are coming into your power as the illusory hold of your previously accepted limitations are shaken. This week's focus feels connected to last week's focus because what I've realized is that there's so much power in where we're placing our attention, and what we need to do collectively is recover our sense of people power. So it's week 2 of Trump's second term, and it's been a really rough week. We've had an insane barrage of executive orders that are completely unjust. And I have found comfort in connecting to my senses and grounding techniques. My go-to has been the 5-4-3-2-1 method. And that means looking for 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And this brings you back into your body, brings you back into your power. When you're spiraling, when you're dissociating, when you feel like your energy is being sucked away by the media and people that seek to control you, you can say, no, I'm coming back to my body with my senses. And your senses ground you. So that's a way to regain control. So speaking about my weekly check-in, I did my morning pages 6 days this week. I always seem to miss Sunday because I'm relaxing or hanging out or going out or whatever. So I'm busy on Sundays, but I want to make it 7 days. That just keeps slipping away on Sundays, but I did not have an intentional artist day. I really felt like shit most of the week. The first part of the week, I was in my luteal phase of my cycle. Then I was on my period, and I get really sick when I'm on my period. I feel just so terrible. But then I take these caffeine pills, which make me feel just alive and creative and capable and inspired. And that's why I had this coffee before I made this video, because I really was not feeling up to making this video, but now I'm feeling a little bit more pepped up. Excuse me. So while I was suffering, I cuddled up, I watched normal people, I read, I researched, I organized my files. One day I wrote 8 pages a day instead of 3 for my morning pages. I cried, I sang, I played piano. There's a group I'm in called Liberation Mystery School, and I attended that, and that was so helpful for me. I feel so much more steady and just like, I'm gonna be okay. No matter how crazy this world is, I can be okay. Or, I don't know that for sure, but at least I feel a little better about that. The first section of this chapter is called Anger. Anger is fuel. Anger drives us to act. Anger is meant to be respected and listened to and acted upon rather than acted out. Anger is a map that tells us where our boundaries are. Rage Against the Machine says anger is a gift. Julia says, in the recovery of a blocked artist, anger is a sign of health. Anger tells us we can't get away with our old life any longer. It tells us that the old life is dying. It tells us we are being reborn, and birthing hurts. The hurt makes us angry. Anger is a firestorm that signals the death of our old life. Anger is the fuel that propels us into our new one. Anger is a tool, not a master. Anger is meant to be tapped into and drawn upon. Used properly, anger is useful. Sloth, apathy, and despair are the enemy. Anger is not. Anger is our friend. Not a nice friend, not a gentle friend, but a very loyal friend. It always tells us when we have been betrayed. It always tells us when we have betrayed ourselves. It always tells us when it is time to act in our own best interests. Anger is not the action itself, it's the action's invitation. And I've been incredibly angry this week. My relationship with anger has not always been as Julia describes it, could be or should be. in order to serve our lives, serve my life. I have been destructive. I have said things that hurt people I love that I would never want to be apart from, and I've destroyed relationships that I don't want to live without. And also I have patterns of depression and fatigue that I think come from suppressing my anger, pushing it down. And I want to harness my anger and channel it to improve my life and not drive people away and not hurt people. I want to use my anger as a fuel source, transmute it and channel it. The second section of the chapter is called Synchronicity. When you start the creative process, you may begin to experience synchronicity or serendipity, a fortuitous intermeshing of events or meaningful coincidences. Synchronicity is when external events align with your inner thoughts, emotions, and experiences in a way that feels significant, like the universe is speaking directly to you. It's when you think of someone and they call. It's when you're seeing a word or a symbol or a number repeatedly. It's randomly encountering a book or a song or a message that directly answers a question that you've been contemplating. It's meeting someone at the exact right moment to help you with something important. Synchronicity is when things align, the possibility of an intelligent and responsive universe, acting and reacting in our interests. Julia says, "It is my experience that this is the case. I have learned, as a rule of thumb, never to ask whether you can do something. Say instead that you are doing it, and then fasten your seatbelt. The most remarkable things will follow." Julia says, "We like to pretend it is hard to follow our heart's dreams. The truth is, it is difficult to avoid walking through the many doors that will open. Turn aside your dream and it will come back to you again." We say we are frightened by failure, but what frightens us more is the possibility of success. Take a small step in the direction of a dream and watch the synchronous doors flying open. The next section of the chapter is called Shame. Julia says, "Art exposes society to itself. It illuminates humanity. It casts a beam of light into the heart of our own darkness and says, 'See?' When people do not want to see something, they get mad at the one who shows them." Shaming someone is an attempt to prevent that person from behaving in a way that embarrasses you. It's a way to control people. Making a piece of art may feel a lot like telling a family secret. Secret telling, by its very nature, involves shame and fear. It asks the question, what will they think of me once they know this? This is a frightening question, particularly if we have been made to feel ashamed for our own curiosities and explorations, social, sexual, spiritual. Art opens the closets, airs out the cellars and attics. It brings healing. But before a wound can heal, it must be seen. And this act of exposing the wound to air and light, the artist's act, is often reacted to with shaming. Shame might creep up when you're nearing the end of a project and make you feel like the whole thing was a waste of time. Julia refers to this sudden disinterest in that thing you were making as a routine coping device to deny pain and ward off vulnerability. So quitting on that project might be self-protection. Julia says, "A well-meaning friend who constructively criticizes a beginning writer may very well end that writer. But not all criticism is shaming. The criticism that damages is that which disparages, dismisses, ridicules, or condemns. It is frequently vicious, but vague and difficult to refute. As artists, we must learn to be self-protective. This means learning where and when to seek out right criticism, when it is appropriate and from whom, considering timing and the source. We must learn to create our own safe environments. When our art reveals a secret of the human soul, those watching may try to shame us for making it. But shame is diffused by making it external and bringing it to light." She says, "The antidote for shame is self-love and self-praise." My shame struggles are related to my energy levels, my ability to self-motivate, my ability to take action. And I will occasionally shame spiral because I hold myself to a very high standard. So shame comes up in me when I feel like I'm falling short or struggling to embody my potential. But I want to move through that, like I said, with my anger and not suppress my shame. Things happen like shame on a micro level, and also it's happening on a bigger level. So our country has a shameful past. Shame is repressed and weaponized in our country. Shame is used as a tool for social control. And we haven't fully digested our history with genocide, imperialism, slavery, systemic inequality, and there's also people trying to rewrite that history and erase it, rather than expose it, heal it, and integrate it. Trump's presidency is a collective confrontation with the shameful aspects of our history because we realize that the past is not really the past, it's also in the present. And we're being forced to acknowledge that rather than ignore it. Trump embodies the shadow side of America, the greed, the narcissism, the corruption, a refusal to take accountability and acknowledge wrongdoing. And when that darkness, that evil is exposed, that's when we have an opportunity for healing it. So we're reaching a collective reckoning. Will we repress it? Will we deny our past and try to rewrite history and cling to illusions of greatness? Or will we acknowledge our flaws, take responsibility, integrate our shadow, and transform our country into a place that works for everybody, that supports everybody? The last section of the chapter is called Dealing with Criticism. Julia says criticism can also be helpful. Pointed criticism, if accurate, often gives the artist an inner sense of relief and clarity about what direction the project needs to go in. She gives some rules of the road for dealing with criticism. I will read those at the end of the chapter. I haven't always been very good at accepting criticism. Sometimes it hurts when you receive it, and then you need time to sit with it and process it and determine what part of the criticism is true, what you need to hold on to, and what you need to release. So criticism can be a gift if you can process it, if you can take it in and process it. I'll just read the rules of the road she gives instead of waiting till the end. But she says, receive the criticism all the way through and get it over with. Jot down some notes to yourself on what concepts or phrases bother you, and also jot down what feels useful. Do something nurturing for yourself and read an old review or recall a compliment that someone gave you. She says, remember, even if you have made a truly rotten piece of art, it may be necessary as a stepping stone to your next work. Art matures spasmodically and requires ugly duckling growth stages. She says, look at the criticism again. Does it remind you of criticism from your past, particularly shaming childhood criticism? Acknowledge to yourself that your current criticism is a trigger of grief over a long-standing wound. She says, write a letter to the critic, not to be mailed, most definitely. Defend your work and acknowledge what was helpful, if anything, in the criticism offered. She says, get back on the horse. Make an immediate commitment to do something creative. And the last tip is do it. Creativity is the only cure for criticism. The last section of the chapter is called Growth. Julia says, growth is erratic forward movement. It's 2 steps back, or it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You think you're making progress, and then you don't, but you're still making progress. A creative recovery is a healing process that requires you to be gentle with yourself, because growth occurs in spurts. You will lie dormant sometimes. Do not be discouraged. Think of it as resting. Very often, a week of insights will be followed by a week of sluggishness. And I struggle with this because I'm very self-punishing. She says, practice being kind to yourself in small, concrete ways and stay open. She says, baby yourself. So I did 3 tasks this week. The first task says, describe 5 traits you like in yourself as a child. When I was a child, I was creative and free to express myself. I was always coming up with ideas and I wasn't afraid to express them. I liked that I had the ability to rest without guilt. I was direct. I was unmasked. I was not afraid to hurt anyone's feelings. And I felt pretty. As a little child, I felt pretty. As an adult, I still feel pretty sometimes, but I don't always feel pretty. The next task I did said list 5 people you admire. The first person I want to mention is Reverend Brenda Ueland, who runs Liberation Mystery School. She's a thought leader, spiritual teacher. I really admire her, and she brings me back to center. I think all of these people that I'll mention bring me back to center and make me feel like, oh yeah, this is the truth. Bernie Sanders, a warrior for the working class for decades. Marianne Williamson, who's an author. She ran for president a couple times, didn't win, but she's really a special person to me. Alok, who is a comedian, who's very fashionable and wise. I Understood, who's a podcaster and creator on the internet. And then the last task was list 5 people you wish you had met who are dead. I said Marshall Rosenberg, who's an author, mediator. He developed nonviolent communication techniques, an approach, a mindset. My second person I listed Martin Luther King Jr. Third person, Aretha Franklin. Third person, Selena Quintanilla. And then the last person I mentioned is named Aisha K. Faines, who was a writer, creator. She studied mythology and archetypes, and she actually has a website called Women, something about women in power. Women Love Power? Yeah, Women Love Power is still up, but it's all about female archetypes. I love it, and I think I found it a couple years ago. She died in 2021. I don't know how she died, but she seemed like a really cool person, and I wish I could have met her. Well, thank you so much for watching my video today, paying attention to the subject matter that I bring forward in this video. I know that there's a lot of other places you could be, and I appreciate your time and attention. Yep, we're finishing week 3, and so next week we'll address week 4. I've made this video a few times, and this is my most energetic take. I hope it's the one that I'll post, but haven't been doing that well, so I hope it makes sense, but thank you.